What a lovely episode we have today. Jacqueline Sharp, the Arkansas Director for the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention, is here to share her story with postpartum depression and share her tips and tricks for a robust suicide prevention program. And live on camera, we realize we are from the same town. So hope you enjoy today's episode. Welcome to the Suicide Prevention Lady podcast, where we make intervention easy. I'm your host, Dr. Ricky Turner, and I am a suicide intervention expert. Please take note, I am the thinky kind of doctor and not a medical professional, so please do not take anything in this podcast as medical advice. Now, here's Jacqueline. All right, I'm here with Jacqueline Sharp. How are you today?
I'm good. How are you, Ricky?
I am good. I'm so glad we got this to work out. We had a little bit of a hiccup, but everything is great. And I fully believe that, the timing is perfect. So it's all good. So you are the area director for the state of Arkansas's American Foundation for Suicide Prevention, correct?
Yes, I am. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Can you tell us a little bit about what that entails?
Sure. So the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention is a national nonprofit. It was started in 1987. At the time that it was created, it was a group of loss survivors and researchers that came together, and they really wanted to invest in research that was not happening at the time about specifically studying the question, is suicide preventable? So our mission is to save lives and bring hope to those affected by suicide. I think we have 73 chapters all over the nation, and Arkansas is one of those, and I help oversee that. We achieve our mission through advocacy, events, support, and education.
Okay. So what kind of advocacy and programs do you guys do?
Yeah, that's a great question. So as far as advocacy is concerned, we have a public policy office that sits right near the Capitol in Washington, D.C., and they kind of help our chapters understand what legislation is coming across our legislators' desks, legislation that can be positive for mental health or negative for mental health. And so we have field advocates. I think it's over 550 field advocates just in the state of Arkansas.
Wow.
Who help answer. They'll send emails saying like, hey, my representative, this is about to come across your desk, and here's why it could negatively impact, and here's my story to share with, because basically what we're trying to do with our advocacy is help our volunteers understand and our community understand that you have a voice and your legislators want to hear from you. And they want you to share your story and how you've been impacted by suicide. And so we do that. And then we also do a state Capitol Day event annually. We go to the state Capitol. We select 2 or 3 pieces of legislation that we want to advocate for. And then we set meetings with legislators and sit down and talk with them. Here's my story. Here are the facts that you need to know about suicide. Here's where you can help us. And then we also we send volunteers to Washington, D.C. in June for an advocacy meeting of all of our chapters. And we meet with legislators then as well. So that's what we do as far as advocacy is concerned. Okay. And then as far as programs, do you have questions on advocacy?
No, please go.
Okay. Yeah. I feel like I'm doing a lot of talking. And I tell people, I'm like, listen, there's a lot to us. So marinate on us. And then when you have questions, come back to me, because it's a lot. So that's our advocacy side. And then our program side is a lot of what we truly do here in the state. So we do a lot of education, public health education. We believe that everybody should know suicide prevention education, just like you do CPR.
Yeah.
Everyone knows first aid, CPR. Everyone should know the warning signs, risk factors. What is research saying? What are the protective factors?
Yeah.
So that includes community groups. We utilize third-party programs that work with churches. What we're finding in our communities in our states is that when there are sections of the state that don't have access to mental health care, and in Arkansas, we do have areas of the state that do not have access to mental health care, they're going to their churches, and their churches are not prepared or don't know what to do. And so there needs to be some education and training there. We will go into, I've been at like Kiwanis meetings. We'll go really anywhere and help educate the public. We also work with schools.
Yeah.
So starting at third grade, we do developmentally appropriate prevention education. What we want to see happen in schools is kind of what I call the gold standard. And I brag on this school district. They have no idea that I go all over the state and brag on them. But the Fort Smith School District has done an excellent job of this, in that their superintendent came to one of our community presentations, loved it so much, he invited us back and said, can you train my staff, my school staff? But not just train them. I want you to train like cafeteria workers, coaches, bus drivers, anybody that has contact with students needs to be trained in this. And I think that should be the standard for all schools.
Yes.
Truly, because I grew up in Alma, Arkansas, and my commute.
Do we know this? We both grew up in Alma?
No way.
I graduated from Alma.
No, you didn't.
That's
What year did you graduate?
2002.
Stop it. I graduated 2007.
Really?
Girl, that's wild. So I say to people all the time, like, listen, with Alma, I had my bus route took me an hour to get home every day.
Yeah.
And so a bus driver might be the person that a child connects with.
Yeah. Well, actually, you may know her. My mother, or my stepmom was, she was the custodian in the high school for years and years and years and years and years, just recently retired. And the stuff she would hear in the bathroom or whatever, it was like, they would treat her as if she was invisible,
Correct.
Not poorly, like but it just, you don't notice that the custodian is there.
Right.
And so she would hear some things, and it's like, I love that I didn't know that Fort Smith was that proactive, but I love that because it's so important.
So important. And so now when we go into schools, which we just launched a new pilot program called Project Renew. It's a student-led high school initiative.
Love it.
We've got about 4 schools this semester that are doing it, and then we'll have 3 schools next semester doing it. But the idea behind it is to empower students to kind of help lead the conversation. We've literally just launched it, and already like the pictures I'm getting from the schools, the meetings that I'm having with these students are excited. They want to be a part of this. They want to engage in this. And what we've encouraged them in is not only do you need to look to educate your school staff and make sure they're educated, but your peers. So at the heart of AFSP, we are a research organization. We're the largest private funder of suicide prevention research globally. And that research informs what we go out and do in the communities. And what we're finding in research is that students are more likely, especially high school, are more likely to tell a friend before a trusted adult.
Absolutely.
So students need to know what to do. What do I do if my friend tells me these things? And, we've got a presentation that is developmentally appropriate and goes through all of those things. And so that's part of what this Project Renew campaign is, educate your teachers, educate your community. We're encouraging them to host a parent night where parents get educated on, how do I talk to my kid? What do I need to be watching out for? Why is it important to ask directly, are you thinking about suicide? So those specific things. And then also you need to educate your peers as well.
Yeah. I love that. Because when I go out, like if I talk to, if I do a keynote or something for a high school or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
something that I always work into my presentations is anonymous polling.
Yeah.
And we start with, broad questions. Do you know somebody who has thought about suicide? Do you know
Right.
whatever? And we work our way down to, have you ever thought about suicide? Have you ever attempted suicide? Have you thought about suicide in the last year? Are you currently thinking about suicide? And the numbers that I see in high schools,
Yeah.
it is alarming.
Yeah.
There's there's this disconnect because, and you kind of hit the nail on the head, they're going to tell their peers first.
Right.
And so what I see a lot of friction when people are like, they don't know if they want to bring me in, because
Right.
if I come in and I start speaking about it, we don't need to put an undue burden on them. They're just kids. And I'm like, they are
Correct.
just kids. You are correct.
Correct. Yes.
This is their reality.
This is their
We can
reality.
traumatize them multiple times a year with active shooter drills. We can talk about suicide.
Literally. Yes. Yeah. No, I mean, and that's the reality too. And we've had this conversation too. I've talked to a couple people, even on school shootings. At the heart of that, suicide prevention is important for that
Yeah.
as well.
Yeah.
So, and making sure that students understand if somebody's starting to show signs.
Mm-hmm.
And what we teach people is the signs you're looking for are basically talk, mood, and behavior. And they're going to be the things that are abnormal for that person.
Yeah.
Something that doesn't seem quite right. They're behaving a little differently. Like those are the things you need to be looking out for. And that's what we try to help educate people. That's the heart of kind of what we do, is educate people. And as I've been going through these high schools, one of the things that I think I've just been so touched by, and I think it's important for parents maybe to hear this. So, I'm telling them, okay, this is what this project is. What are some of your ideas? Immediately they've got ideas. We could do this or we could do that. And one of the things that has now been brought up organically, I did not say this they did this all on their own, is there a way that we can do student testimony during the parent night? Because we want parents to know what we're actually thinking. And I love that idea, because as a parent, I want to know those things. I want to know what are you thinking when you're struggling? Where are your concerns? And so we've talked about, like, how can we do that safely?
I have
and
to
make
grab
sure.
something as an illustration. I'm going off of screen, but it's just
You're
right here. I didn't want you to be like, oh, she's dipping out of the conversation.
You're fine.
And you said something that reminded me, and I was like, oh, I have them right here. Go ahead.
Yeah. So, like, just making sure that they have testimony, and they want that. We've got a researcher. You can kind of learn from our researchers on our website. I'm a huge nerd in this. And that was one of the things that drew me to AFSP is I love research. I love hearing about what we're finding. I love all of that. And so you can go to afsp.org, and we've got about 2-minute videos of hundreds of our researchers that we funded all over the globe. And one of our researchers talks about, they did a research study on what do high school students truly want from their parents. And the number one thing is to listen, to actually listen. And so I think all of that is very critical for people to understand. And I think for Arkansas specifically, and you and I have kind of touched on this, and to speak to the fear of bringing you in as a keynote speaker, because we also get that.
Yeah, I'm sure.
We did another program for education in schools, and we got pushback in a lot of schools. And I think what I try to make sure people understand about Arkansas specifically around suicide is we're still kind of at that base of destigmatizing. There's still the belief that if we talk about suicide, we're going to create it, which is a myth. And it's there. We want to be proactive. We want to be preventative. We want to be making sure people have all the tools in the tool belt to understand what to do.
Yeah.
So
yeah. I'm always taken aback by, I'm so vocal. It's ridiculous, like how vocal I am. No one in my circle knows or can ever say, oh, Ricky
Yeah.
doesn't, I don't know if she does anything with suicide or not. It's not like, I can't shut up about it. Right.
Right.
And still,
Yeah.
I had somebody stop me. Like, I unfortunately did not have time to actually have a good conversation about it. It's not like me to walk away from a conversation like this, but I had to that day. But
Yeah.
like, I had some drama going on with my son, like some health stuff, and I was trying to get to the end to talk to him, and it was in and out of the junior high, right? And I run into somebody, and somehow, I don't know how we got here, but in the matter of 0.3 seconds, suicide comes up.
Yeah.
But it was talking about a girl at the junior high who
Yep.
was suicidal, and was telling her son that she was suicidal, and he was afraid to break up with her. And she had the audacity to say to me, and I told him that he needs to tell her she can go ahead and do it, because no one who wants to kill themselves actually tells anybody about it. And I was like, is this happening to me right now? Like, in this moment? And it's so scary, because it's
So
like,
scary.
it seems like those are the two major beliefs, especially in our area, is if you talk about it, you give them the idea, or if they're talking about it, they just want attention and no one's going to do anything about it anyway. And I'm like, oh, it's to educate to that when it's on those two extremes, and you never know what you're dealing with.
Correct. It is hard to educate. And, I think so we train volunteers to give our presentations. And when I train volunteers, I'm like, listen, you are going to get some weird questions. And I need you to be prepared for those questions, because it's not that people are coming at this in a like accusatory, or they are truly trying to understand. For years, we have not talked about this. Maybe if we keep quiet about it, it'll go away. That's not how this works. That's not how any public health crisis works. And we know through research that we can save lives, and that educating people is key to that. And so I do prepare people. You do get some doozies I once had somebody, and I share this. So normally when I'm out, I have Jacqueline AFSP, and then I have Jacqueline, my personal life. I have to have those things be two different things. I had somebody, I once said, they were like, well, who do you work for? And so I shared, the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention, and I cannot make this up. The next response was, ew. And I think I laughed. And then I said, well, I find it incredible. I meet incredible, courageous, amazing people all over the state who've experienced some of the darkest days human beings can experience. And it is very hope filled. So there is still such a stigma attached.
Oh, yeah.
And so it's just helping people. And when I get interesting questions or comments, I always lean back into what our education says. A big question that we get here in the state is, well, I don't see how somebody could be morally okay with that. And the conversation becomes, I understand that is your opinion, thought process, all of that. But I need you to understand that we're talking about the brain. We're talking about the brain is going into crisis.
Yep.
When you have experienced pain in your life, whatever that pain looked like, whatever it was, your thinking became centralized to that pain.
Yeah.
You're not going to think about anything else. And people that are in active suicidal crisis, that is what they're experiencing.
Yeah.
They can only think about the pain that is happening.
Mm-hmm.
And so the brain is having a moment of crisis. And we know these things through research. So I kind of approach those things that way. And then it's really hard. Like your specific example is really hard, because the immediate response would be like, oh my gosh, no, who's helping that young lady?
Yeah.
Like you almost have to tactfully be like, well, so actually, we encourage everybody to take any type of conversation around suicide seriously.
Right.
Reach out to her parents.
Right.
Is the school aware? Does she have support in place? So yeah, that's tough.
in that specific situation too, like you're talking about the accusation is she's doesn't want the boyfriend to break up with her, so she's going to threaten suicide. Okay. That's manipulative suicide ideation. Okay. Do you know that's what it is? And so
Correct. Yeah.
and I was overwhelmed in that moment. I was overwhelmed with the 1,000 different ways I could take this conversation. And I had exactly 0 time to tap any of those avenues, like to chase any of those rabbits. But I was like, I want to tell you, and I did come back later.
Yeah.
Somebody I knew. And so it was like, when I did find the time, it was like, okay, hang on. I'm really worried about this girl.
Yeah.
So,
But
but it's like, how do you teach them? It's not okay to be manipulated.
Yeah.
It's that person's life is not your son's responsibility.
Yep.
And how do we also care for her? Because whether it's for attention or not, whether it's manipulative or not, we went there.
Yep.
Something needs to be addressed because that is where we went. So is it that is an actual threat?
Yes.
Let's assess that.
Correct.
Does she need support somewhere else? Let's address that. Like,
yes. Like, and I've gotten that question a couple times where it's, oh, we're threatening suicide for attention. My 2 cents in this, and my children are young, so take it as you will, but my 2 cents in this is you take it seriously.
Every time.
And students need to understand that if you start saying that, this, and this are about to happen.
Yep.
Things are about to fall in place that are going to limit your access to lethal means. We are going to make your environment safe. We are going to ensure that you have counseling, support. All these things are going to come in place because, and I feel like not to be a deterrent to students to like, but you need to know the seriousness, the weight of that, truly the weight of what you're saying. And the things behind that.
And you need to know that we value your life enough to do
this. Correct. Yes.
That's the thing. Like you hit on it. It's not, I want to put in all these things so there's consequences to your actions. Like we're not trying to crack down.
Correct.
I need you to know you are important.
You are important.
Matter. And we have these things in place to keep you safe.
Correct. Yes. And, we just recently we have Out of the Darkness walks. Mm-hmm. These are events that take place all over the state. We had one in Fort Smith, and we had this incredible young lady that came and spoke to us and shared her story. And this is, in my opinion, such a good example of where I go, are we sure we want to we're good with hanging our hat on that? Like, I would not be okay with that. But she shared at 10 years old, she was actively thinking about killing herself at 10. And people are blown away by, statistically speaking, it's the 3rd leading cause of death for ages 10 to 19. People do not understand that.
Right.
And they're like, there's no way. And she shared that when she shared that, she got sent to the nurse. The nurse brought in the principal, and the principal said, no 4th grader can understand what suicide is. Go back to class. And that was their answer. And for me, it broke my heart. It broke my heart for that 10-year-old because, clearly there was so much more going on, and she shares that in her story. But to just sign that off with, there's no way a 4th grader could understand that.
Yeah.
I would not feel good hanging my hat on that.
I had a similar situation. So I won't say which school district, but there's a school district in Arkansas that they were trying to, there's backstory here. I spoke at the Arkansas School-Based Health System Conference or Symposium in Hot Springs. Okay. And, when you have an agenda for the day and the meeting over lunch is to talk about suicide, people don't want to do it, right? Yeah. And when they gave me that lunchtime spot, I was like, cool. It's a big lift. It's a big lift. All right, I got it. And so my presentation style, though, people laugh throughout the whole thing. Like we have poignant moments. I share poignant things and where you can hear a pin drop, but there's other times like we're laughing, if we're talking about suicide, I got to do something, because when people
Right.
see that, you know,
Right.
so anyway, it's engaging and everything. Anyway, so the people that were there really enjoyed it, and we're actively trying to get me into their school-based systems, right, to come speak to the district. One in particular, they had the idea that I could come in and talk like during advisory or something like that, like the advisory period or homeroom or whatever, and hit classes that way. And the response was, well, maybe we could do it. Maybe we could do it for like the remedial classes and stuff like that. But like, we don't need to involve like the advanced kids in that, because that's not their issue. And I was like,
Oh,
did you,
yikes.
what? Like the gifted kids, and they don't need suicide
They're
prevention.
fine.
They're no danger, but you know, maybe we can get it in with, oh my God. And I was like, okay, that's gonna be a hard one to get into, because
Yep.
of these preconceived notions, but and
Correct.
it didn't get in because
Yeah.
it didn't seem valuable to them. But
Yep.
that came from the principal, was like, well,
Yes. And we have, so there's a researcher here in state that did a study of our schools across Arkansas. And what they found was, if you entered a school and said, we'd like to do suicide prevention, you likely would not be invited to do that. But if you entered the school and said, it's mental health, it's literally the word suicide that scares. And I've had conversations with universities about like, listen, you know, this whole myth about if we talk about it, we're going to create it. The reality is it's there. It's there.
Mm-hmm.
It's on your university campus. It's on your college campus. It's in your high school. It's with the gifted kids. It's with the remedial kids. It's with all your children. You know, that concept. And I think that's where so much of our work in our programming and education is just educating people on the conversations and on like the key elements that we found through research. And it's often that I get people that are like, oh my gosh, is that real? And I'm like, yes, it is very real. And it is critical to helping save someone's life. So, yeah, I mean, I think when you're working with schools, that's a big part of the lift, is helping them understand that this is every student. And we got invited to go, which I'll kind of shout them out and give them a little praise. But Fayetteville School District, their athletic department, actually brought us in. And last year, we had a racetrack basketball player who was supporting our cause and was like kind of speaking on behalf of mental health and suicide prevention. And so I invited him to come with me to talk to the athletic department in Fayetteville High School. So it's like about 50 teens that walked in. We were like, oh my gosh, we're not anticipating that many kids. But to kind of speak to this concept of like, oh, the gifted kids don't need that. Just to kind of flip that on its head, you know, talking to those athletes, those student athletes, the demand, the pressure they experience.
Yes.
And I think that's another misconception, is that mostly what we engage with is people saying, oh, that child died by suicide because they were bullied. And that's the outward facing thing that you saw. You didn't see all the other layers that were attached to it. And so what I almost always tell people is suicide is complicated.
Yeah.
There's no one reason that leads to suicide. It is typically multiple things that are converging to create a point of crisis.
Right.
And, you know, we talked about, and Jeremiah did such a good job, you know, as a Razorback basketball player, the feedback he gets on social media, whether he has a good game or a bad game, you know, can be so detrimental to your mental health. So we talked about like the impacts of social media for athletes and, you know, that kind of, so I think, again, I can't stress enough, it's that baseline educating our school administrators of like, this is here, it's here. And what we want you to know is we want to give you all the tools, and we want to give your students all the tools to help prevent it, because we can prevent it. That's what we know.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So I'm going to share with you this
Please.
pile of papers that you had talked about. They wanted to do student testimonials.
Yeah.
Right? So when I do my suicide intervention training, like the actual, like I go in and work with a group, typically college students or high school students or whatever, but it can be whatever. When I do that, if they do the full hour and a half, because that's like my minimum to really get everything that I want to get done. Part of it is I give them a piece of paper and I tell them, do not put any identifying information on this thing. I don't want your name. I don't want your birth date. I don't want anybody's names on this. Okay. Just take this and I want you to write your connection to suicide. Just write it down.
Yeah.
Why do you care? Like it's always at the beginning. And I'm like, I want you to sit here and think and identify, why do you care? Why are you going to be engaged in the next hour and a half? Some people will write, I was told to be here. Great. We've identified it. Cool. Others will use this as a cathartic therapeutic experience and I keep them. And so I just happened, like, as you were saying that, I have,
oh my gosh, I love that.
Back that like, I'll just read through them and I keep some of them because they share that
a reminder.
Yeah. And it's nice for other people. And so like, when they get a chance, because then we take them up and we shuffle them around and we play a game where they try to spread them and everything. And then they grab one and then they read it to themselves. And, you know, we share some of the more poignant ones with the group, but they see what's happening, right? That's so powerful to have that testimony.
Right.
Because this isn't some story from some rando on the internet.
Correct.
You know this person. This happened to them. This person just wrote this in this room or whatever, you know. Same with the statistics. Like, everyone's eyes glass over when you start talking about suicide.
Correct.
10th leading cause or whatever. Like, they're like, snore. But if you're like, okay, in this room, 5% of the people in this room just said that they're currently thinking about suicide as an option. 5% of this room. So take a look around and see if you can figure out who those people are, because you can't.
Yeah, correct.
You don't know.
Yeah.
And so that, like, when you do it that way, they're like, and you can tell, like, the whole vibe is just like, oh shit, we got to pay attention.
Literally, yeah.
Yeah, like that's how you get them, is this is affecting this room right now. And that principals, presented in a room full of principals before, I've never had 0 people say that they were currently thinking about suicide. I've never been in a room where not one person did. Yeah. That's insane.
It should be so telling. And I love that you do that, because I think you're spot on. Like, you start doing spouting, and so part of sometimes I get up and I'm like, my job is so weird, because like I'll get like requests. I got a request one time. Someone wanted us to send them a whole bunch of brochures, which we're happy to do, but they were doing a dance and it was like geared towards suicide loss. And I said, great. Is there any way that I can review the choreography before I send you stuff? Because we don't talk about lethal means.
Yeah.
It's unsafe. And so I want to just make sure that it's safe for us to be sending our stuff to. And so I literally, I kid you not, watched a dance routine to like make sure the choreography was safe, and it wasn't. And so I had this like moment of like, hey, here's the deal. This is not safe. This particular part of the choreography. And they were incredibly kind. Oh my gosh, we were not aware. We're changing the choreography to ensure that it's safe, so we can have a smart conversation around this. So like, people are into that, but sometimes my job is very odd in that way, but I will review people that speak. And I often tell people, be mindful of putting too much statistics.
Yeah.
People stop listening.
Yeah.
They want the connection, and that connection can be told in a very safe way.
Yeah.
It's just, there are a few check boxes we need to look at, and then that's going to have more impact than just spouting off statistics. Because you're right. People they glaze over. They like, okay, cool. So, but making sure they understand it's right here in your community. It's
Yeah.
people you know and love that have been affected by it is huge.
Yeah. Okay. So speaking of, it's going back to a previous topic we were talking about, but when
Yes.
you're presenting or when you're doing your work, I mean, you're the lead of the Arkansas Foundation, I'm sure you've heard this before, but if you haven't, it's something that I have heard.
Sure.
So I want to know what your answer would be.
Okay.
Why should I participate in a walk for awareness? Why should
Ooh.
how does that actually help anybody? How does that actually help suicide prevention?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So our walks are free to participate in. We do peer-to-peer fundraising. So if you want to fundraise, that is your choice. But to participate in a walk, you're doing a couple key things. So, I said that we are the leading largest private funder of suicide prevention research globally. And that comes from our walks. We are able to do that because of our walks and our events that we do. And when you show up at a walk, you're doing a couple different things. One, you are helping to communicate to your community at large that, hey, we need to be paying attention to this. I find this important, and this is something we need to invest in as a community. Often when I talk to companies and corporations, what I say is, you being able to say, hey, we're participating in this event, we're sponsoring this event, is helping to show your employees that you are taking initiative in mental health and suicide prevention.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of times, when they sponsor events, part of their sponsorship benefits is us doing education. We will go into companies and organizations and provide education, and that can be huge. Huge. We work with HR to highlight the benefits that they have around their mental health. So you're letting your community know this is an issue that I find important, and we need to pay attention to this as a community. The other thing that you're doing is you are finding support. Oftentimes when I talk to loss survivors, the first thing that they say is, I want to do whatever it takes so that no one else has to experience my journey in this. And when they show up to a walk, there's a couple things that we do that help really build that community of support. So we have these things called our honor beads. And people are always like, Mardi Gras beads, why? Yes, they are Mardi Gras beads. But they serve a purpose, and they are something that are treasured amongst our volunteers and our participants. So each color that we have represents loss or connection to the cause. And so you see people walking around with beads. And I have a board member that shares a story. The first time he went to an Out of the Darkness walk, he went to the bead table and he picked up 2 gold beads. And gold represents the loss of a parent. And the person working the bead table said, oh, I think you're confused. You only need to get just one. And he goes, no, I'm not confused. And she just came around the table and just hugged him.
Yeah.
And so the other thing with those beads is that as you're walking through the event, you are recognizing the number of people that have green beads on, which is people that have lived experience they previously attempted. You're recognizing the number of people who've lost spouses or children, and you're able to start connecting with other loss survivors. Because one thing that I've heard from loss survivors, especially when they're new in their loss journey, is I just want to talk to somebody else that has experienced this. And so it creates that support and that connection. And we have teams that come in that are loss survivors, and they all, get together, meet up, talk. It's typically the one time a year that they're seeing each other, if not, a couple more times, but it can be very, very therapeutic for you to realize that, hey, you're not an island. You are not alone in your experiences. And there are other people, and it doesn't matter socioeconomically. There are other people that have experienced this. So that's why you walk. For those reasons.
Okay. That's a perfect answer. It's very similar to the one I give. But it goes into, so part of my research, it was on faculty intervention with college student suicide, right?
Yeah.
And I use the theory of planned behavior, which this won't last long. Please don't fall asleep or turn it off.
You're good. No, I love it. Nerdy, remember? I love
nerdy,
that
yeah.
stuff.
But part of that awareness piece, it goes into what we call subjective norms. And that was the construct, one of the three constructs that I was studying. It was the subjective norms. And that's saying, okay, I work at a place that values suicide prevention and thinks that saving lives matter, or whatever. Like, it's important to know that it's important to other people, it's important to ourselves, that those situations and organizations around us care about these things.
Right.
Because you can say all day long, my university cares about suicide prevention. Like, you can say that out loud. But if there's no policies, if there's no visible signs that you actually do care about it, then it's just lip service. And so that's another thing, is like, it goes into that whole construct of, I mean, it's actions speak louder than words. That's what it is.
Correct. Yes. Correct. Yes.
Put your money where your mouth is, kind of thing. So
yes. Oftentimes when we approach universities, and I've had this conversation a couple different times just this year alone, that we do community walks and then we do campus walks. And when I approach universities, or they approach us and say, we want to host a campus walk, amazing, I love it, we're happy to help support that. But the number one thing I say to them is, what I need you to hear from me is that I don't want AFSP to be at your university one time a year. I don't want that. I want the students to get to know our organization, for there to be education, for them to have receipts of, this is what this is all about. Why we walk is because of all this education that we're receiving throughout the year. The faculty are familiar with the education that we receive. That is more important to me, even, which, I'm sure my national org would roll over, but that's more important to me than having a walk. Is we need you all to have the education and the tools that you need.
What's the substance afterwards? What's the
correct?
How do we get our claws in there?
Correct. We want to give you the things that you need to be successful. And I think folks don't understand, we have colleges and universities that have no counseling departments. They have no access to mental health care. And so what can we do to really help take care of those communities, those hubs, and make sure they have the things they need?
So we're coming up. We've spent a lot of time talking, which is fantastic. I love when the conversations flow like this. I have a few questions that are just, I can't live with myself if I don't get to. So how did you get into this role? Like, how did you find your way to suicide prevention?
It's going to sound impressive. It is not. A headhunting company reached out to me, and I thought it was spam, so I ignored it for about a month.
Lovely.
And I, in the meantime, had a family member who went into crisis. And before I took this job, I knew very little about suicide prevention, about how to support somebody in crisis. But I knew the way that my family responded was not the right way. I at least knew that. And then I went back to that spam, and I thought, well, what the heck, I'll try. And lo and behold, it was for the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention. And I started researching the organization and just absolutely fell in love. I loved that it was research driven, because I think that's critical. I love that it was all about hope. And so 5 interviews later, I got the position, and really started in the next year just educating myself. I've done every training that we offer, and which is not a requirement, actually, weirdly enough, for this position. But I've done every education that we offer because I want to know what I'm talking about when I'm talking to people. And since then, I've really started sharing my own lived experience around postpartum.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a big, like, I'm a champion for that. I want to talk about that. I've done a Newsweek blog about my experience with
Mm-hmm.
postpartum. I've talked to The Hill about postpartum. We live in a state with the worst maternal mortality rate in the nation. This is a conversation that has to happen. And the good news is we're starting to see the shift in that. So that's
Yeah.
how I got started in suicide prevention.
Okay. So I don't want to like go into all the nitty gritty of it necessarily. That probably could be another episode, honestly. But you mentioned that you had this experience with postpartum and everything. So during that time, did you become suicidal, or were you did? Okay. Do you mind telling just Reader's Digest version of this?
Yeah, Reader's Digest version. My first pregnancy did not go according to plan. Just a FYI for listeners, they typically don't. So
Yeah, they
just
don't. They never
really
mind.
kind of being prepared that that's just going to really be reality. I think I would have appreciated that a little bit more. I ended up an emergency C-section.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing about postpartum, I tell people that I don't know that people have really understood is it actually leans towards all of those warning signs that we talk about.
Yeah.
You're isolated. Your life has shifted significantly. Women are, hormonally, it is a massive shift from even going from being pregnant to now baby's born. Your whole reality has shifted. You're not getting sleep. Sleep, I could do a whole conversation on sleep and the impacts of not getting sleep with suicide prevention. I mean, that's a common theme that we're running into. And so I wasn't getting sleep. I felt like I was failing my son. I am a perfectionist at heart. So I was really struggling with all those things. And I just started thinking over and over, I think my husband and my son would be better off without me.
I knew you were going to say that. I knew those were the exact words that were about to come out of your mouth. I knew it. Go ahead.
And so I really was thinking, and one of the things we tell people is like, if you are crying more often and, you're hormonal, but I was crying all the time. I could not, and I shared with somebody, I think I'm not okay. And the statement was, oh, it's baby blues. Like, it'll pass. And I knew enough for it to be like, no, I think this is more than that.
Yeah.
And I had so much shame around saying, like, I am thinking about killing myself.
Yeah.
Because I am experiencing so much change, pain, confusion. I'm overwhelmed. I'm incredibly depressed. And I think the thing that people don't understand is they're like, you have a new baby. This should be the happiest time of your life.
Yeah.
And it's not about the baby. I
Yeah.
used to cry and tell Bennett, I'm sorry, mommy's sad. It's not you.
Yeah.
It's me. I love you.
Yeah.
So, I think people don't understand that completely. But for me, what kind of helped get me out of that point was I started putting things on my day-to-day calendar. Okay, we're going to get up, and in between feeding time, we're going to go walk outside.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to get in the sun. We're going to go walk outside. As silly as this is, we're going to go to Target today. That's our big thing that we're going to do. We're going to get out. We're going to go see somebody and have lunch. Those things as a new mom seem so daunting. And so you often find yourself just staying in. The other thing that was incredibly helpful to me, and I share this in my story, is that my son was probably about 5 months old, and we went to an event for a nonprofit that I was a board member for. And a friend, we were just had this moment of kind of standing next to each other, quiet. We were watching my husband and my son, and she just turned to me and said, I hated the newborn stage. It just was not for me. And I kid you not, I went like this.
Oh, my people.
In my head, I was like, we're allowed to say that?
Yeah.
We're allowed to think that? And
Yeah.
that was the like, oh,
not alone.
I'm not alone. And I'm not the weirdo in the group that's like, this is not fun. This is not fun to be in the newborn stage. And she went on to be like, after 6 months, like, every stage after was my favorite. And that has been my case. And I just, every stage afterwards, like, and so I have another child, my second pregnancy. I advocated for myself and told, which I did not do, and told my gynecologist, I said, hey, I really struggled with suicidal thinking and depression postpartum. And she was like, let's do some medication. And I have told people since the difference that made in my postpartum experience makes me thrilled, but also makes me sad, because had I known what I know today, I could have had a very different newborn stage with my son. And so that makes me sad.
Yeah.
But I'm also grateful knowing what I know today.
Yeah. Yeah. And I knew when you started telling the story, I knew you were going to say, thought they'd be better off. And then I knew you were going to come back with, and people were like, it's just the baby blues.
Yeah.
Yeah. Being a mom's hard. It's just going to be hard.
Right.
You know? But everybody gets through it. You know, that.
Right. Not helpful.
Which, has that ever helped anybody in the history of ever? Has that been like minimizing the problems, made it all the better? Like, oh, okay.
Correct.
Oh, yes. This is great. Now I'm happy. Thanks for for me.
It's the same concept. So there's a line in our education that it's kind of snarky. It's a little cheeky and I love it, but it's true. It's this idea, if someone's in active suicidal crisis, you're not going to go, I think you should just get sleep, or I think you should just do this. Just like you wouldn't do if somebody was having a heart attack. Yeah. You wouldn't go, you know what? We just need to eat better. You just need to go for a run. You know, like that. You need to exercise. Yeah. Same concept for postpartum is like, you're fine. You're fine. Just hug your baby more, you know. And again, we could do a whole episode. It's so complicated. The postpartum and even perinatal is the whole thing. Can have all these different things with it. And so I think people understanding like what moms need, because that's what I'm often asked. Well, what would you encourage other moms to do? And it's just offer to come and sit and have adult conversations. Or do you want me to take you to lunch with the baby or without the baby? Do you want me to come and just, you know, hang out and hold the baby? Like how can I be someone that can just listen? Because being able to just have somebody to talk to when you have a newborn, you're not sleeping, you're not able to like have adult conversation. It's a lot, and your whole process of life changes. And so offering those things where you can be a listening voice is huge. Yeah. Yeah. I 100% agree. You're describing, and I came up with a framework just to help teach people whenever I'm doing my speeches, and it's the EASE framework, EASE. The first E is express care. The A is ask them directly. Yep. The S is show up for them. And that's what you're describing, is the show up. Yes. Like, it's not a, hey, can I bring you dinner? It's I'm bringing you dinner. Would you like chicken or tacos? Like, take the tea out. Like, you want me to leave it on the porch, or do you want me to come in and eat with you? Like, those are your options. These are the things I am doing. Hey, have your laundry bagged up. I'm going to come by and grab it, and I'm going to go ahead and wash that for you and bring it back. Don't even just stick it out on the outside. It's fine. Whatever it can be, but like, show up and do it. And if you're curious, the last one is entrust somebody else. If you don't feel like you can do it, find the person that can. It's fine. You don't have to be the one. Go get somebody else. So, I like that. All right. So as we wrap up, do you have any like parting messages to give to, like, because the audience that I have is kind of split in two. We have the people who listen because they find support and they're suicidal themselves or have lived experience, and they just find community in it. And then we have the target audience, which is people who care about suicide but don't really know what to do, and they just want to learn, how can I be of help? What can I do? So I love that. With that in mind, what do you got? Yeah, I mean, all the things that were said previously, but I think the biggest thing for me that I try to encourage people in is, if you don't know, learn. That would be my challenge to your target audience. Educate yourself. We have so much education out there now. You can go to afsp.org/calendar, and we put a national calendar together of all of our virtual trainings, all of our things that we offer. So you can join those at no cost and participate with those. We do events throughout the year for programming, for education, but also we do our walks and our engaging community events. If you're a loss survivor, I would encourage you to participate in our International Survivors of Suicide Loss Day. This is a recognized day that happens the Saturday before Thanksgiving. We know for loss survivors, the holidays can be particularly difficult.
Right.
And so we have 4 events that are taking place all over the state this year. And you can find that on our website, afsp.org/Arkansas. And this is a great time for you to meet specifically with other loss survivors and hear their stories, find support, and talk about the grief journey. Because what we know is it's not linear, and it's important for you to find support in your communities. And so we offer these events at no cost. And yeah, I say educate yourself, find support. It is out there. And the biggest thing is you're not alone. You are not alone. And I told somebody recently in Fort Smith, they said, do you feel like that the tide is changing? And I said, you know what? I do feel like the tide is changing. We want to talk about this. We want to know how to do it correctly. And so by listening today to the podcast and watching this, you're participating. You're an active role in making sure that our communities in Arkansas are educated.
Yeah. Beautifully said. I love it so much. Thank you. I can't tell you how much I appreciate you taking the time to do this.
This is great.
Yeah. So I will link your website. I will link that in the show notes. So if people want to get involved with, I'll put the national one. And if you're in a specific state, you can always drill down and get to your local chapters. But I want to make sure that people know how to get involved because there's so many different ways you can. So much thanks to Jacqueline for that episode. We had so much fun recording it, and we had some pretty great, powerful nuggets for people to take into their suicide prevention efforts. I was able to look at the analytics of the podcast, and number of downloads or plays is far higher each week than the number of subscribers. So if you're one of those lurkers out there, please do me a favor and go ahead and subscribe wherever you are getting this podcast. Could be Spotify, Apple, YouTube, maybe other places. I don't know. Those are the ones I know about. It helps us more than you know, and it just takes a moment to feed the algorithm gods their little sacrifice for better ratings. So the higher the ratings we have, the better it gets out in front of people. So I really appreciate you doing that. I'm sure there are some of you who are ready to get involved with an event at your local AFSP chapter. So if you check the show notes, I've linked to the volunteer site for you. So you can go ahead and sign up. The least you could do is look for an awareness walk near you and sign up. It is such an easy way to join the movement to end suicide, and it's probably going to open your eyes a little bit. Next week, I reconnect with a childhood friend who has overcome abuse, addiction, and being bullied for being different in a small town. You don't want to miss my exclusive interview with the Patrick Starchild. So tune in next week as we continue to learn how to intervene with ease.